Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. Now that President Donald Trump has solved the U.S. border crisis, the New York Times has decided this would be a good time to take a deep dive into former President Biden's disastrous decisions that led millions to flood into the country to begin with. This is a way of blaming the former president for the deportation tactics the Times now hates. Wouldn't it have been nice to have some of this honesty about what happened under Joe Biden prior to November 2024? I'm sorry, they're so dishonest. I know you know this, but that is just so dishonest. It's literally been 13 months since the election, and now they want to do the deep dive. Now we're going to get honest about what Joe Biden did. It's disgusting. Journalism is dead at the New York Times. It's dead. How they could not include some massive self-flagellation at the top of this about their role in facilitating it, excusing it, ignoring it, and thus allowing it continues to befuddle me. Was there no one at the Times who said, if we're going to do it, we're going to need to acknowledge our role in it? I guess not, because there it is. Like they figured it out. That's the other galling thing about this article. It's like they figured it out. We'll go through this article, but let me just give you the top line truth. There is nothing in this article outside of the fact that Biden was warned by his top emissaries before he took office that this was going to be a disaster. That's the only new piece. Beyond that, there's nothing in here that will be news to you. Nothing. You lived it all. You knew the news. We reported on it. You guys wrote in about it. We had guests on about it. You and I are on the same page. It's amazing. This is coming as new information to Times readers. Like, oh my gosh, the numbers, they're bad. By the way, they still limit it to the number who came in under Joe Biden. They claim it's 3 million. Guess again. I guess we'll get the real numbers from the Times that it's anywhere between 11 and 20 in another year, or maybe 1 year post the 2028 election. We'll get into that. Plus, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar compares Stephen Miller, who is Jewish, to the Nazis. It's a favorite parlor game. We're supposed to just let this slide for Stephen Miller. I don't know. It's like, I guess we're not supposed to express outrage when the guy who's the architect of Trump's immigration policy continues to be called a Nazi, a Jewish man. I have to say, I admire his wife, Katie, who has been going on CNN and other places saying, stop fucking doing that. You're endangering my children, my family, my husband. No one cares. Abby Phillips doesn't care at all. She's fine with it. She believes it. That's what's obvious. And akin with Abby Phillip, Margaret Brennan over on CBS News basically yawned. Yeah, tracks. You could sort of see the little caption over her head. Yeah, sounds about right. Nazi. And we'll have the latest for you on the battle between MTG and Trump, this time taking place courtesy of 60 Minutes. Joining me now on all of this and more, Walter Kirn. He's editor-at-large of County Highway and co-host of the America This Week podcast. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. There's a lot of politicians that should be getting coal in their stocking for Christmas, but Birch Gold thinks, as a smart planner, you deserve silver. That's why for every $5,000 you purchase between now and December 22nd, Birch Gold will send you an ounce of silver, which is up over 60% this year. See, smart people diversify and have a hedge. That's why you should consider Birch Gold. With the rate cuts from the Fed in 2026, the dollar could be worth less. And what happens if the AI bubble bursts? Consider letting Birch Gold Group help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. And for every $5,000 you buy, you'll get an ounce of silver for you or your kids. Just text MK to 989898 to claim your eligibility for this offer. Again, text MK to the number 989898 because Birch Gold's free silver with qualifying purchase promotion ends on December 22nd. Message and data rates may apply. Welcome back to the show, Walter. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm in Hollywood in a hotel room. I've been to the excessive parties that they throw for themselves over the weekend and seen movie stars run off with bags of gifts that probably should be distributed to Toys for Tots and would keep whole neighborhoods happy. Instead, they're going to throw them in their extra mailroom at home, I guess. But it's good to be here. It's nice to be a festive time of year. But as you say, it's hard to be happy and optimistic about the year that's coming when you're seeing this kind of stuff at the end of this one. I mean, that was a crazy piece. Well, the only reason they did it, Megyn, was because they want to minimize it. Now that they can't ignore it. See, they weren't going to do a story before because they thought it was going to work. Before it was policy. Before it was going to lead to a whole reorganization of the United States along the lines that the New York Times would like to see. They didn't report on it because it was good back then. Now they're reporting it as though it's maybe got some ill effects, but they want to minimize those. And they want, and what they're really doing is the audience for these stories is now the AI, to show that New York Times is covering things and prove that to the AI. So when people look it up, they'll see, yes, they did a story on it. But is it enlightening us? Is it, journalism of the kind we used to revere and honor? No, it's a trick, really. It's a trick.
I mean, the nerve to pretend this is new information. Like, you don't even have to be considered right to know all these facts. If you are just right adjacent, if you are like center right, very moderately right, or even center left, you probably knew all these facts that they're offering about the number of illegals who flew in, about how everything Biden did made it even easier for them, how he was taken advantage of at every turn, how they gamed the system. Right. I mean, they're talking about when Abbott sent the illegals up to New York City, like, oh my God, we have news for you. No, we know all of that. We lived it. We were mocking you because it was a brilliant move. And you guys were pretending like you were welcoming the illegals at the time. Only now do we get the hard truth, which is you didn't like it. It blew up New York. It blew up social services. Like, the nerve, like the disrespect of the paper towards its readers to pretend this is new.
Well, they did the same thing with COVID. They've done the same thing with Biden's dementia. They did the same thing with Russiagate. You see, news used to be about getting the story first. And now it's about being the last one in to tell everybody what's been obvious to them for years, such that you can put it away, start to decrease the outrage, give them a couple of months of venting about this. And then we'll move on to the next fucking crazy thing that you should never have to put up with, that we'll pretend isn't happening and maybe tell you the truth about in 5 years. That's how it works now.
It's really great when you actually go through it. I want to actually do that because the examples that they have in there. First of all, I'm going to start with this tweet from Dan Turrentine, who we love, formerly of Two Way with Mark Halpern and Sean Spicer, but those three guys broke up. I don't know the story, but it's sad they broke up. Anyway, here's Dan's tweet. Could not stomach reading this story on Joe Biden's immigration policy this morning for fear I would be depressed, angry, or both. Just read it now and hope my blood will stop boiling by bedtime. Every Democrat needs to read and take a long look in the mirror. Yeah, he's right. And he is one of the honest Dems out there. But now here's what you've got on from the New York Times piece. I'm going to give you a couple of notable lines. In the weeks after Biden was elected president, advisors delivered a warning. His approach to immigration could prove disastrous. This is the part that's interesting. They talk about, the warnings that were given to him before he even started ruining our country. Biden's positions threatened to drastically increase border crossings, experts advising his transition team warned in a Zoom briefing in the final weeks of 2020. Chaos was the word the advisors had used in a memo during the campaign. In August of 2020, so this is right before the election, several aides wrote a memo cautioning Biden's inner circle that his promises, quote, could provoke a spike in border crossings. You think? Aides described Mr. Biden as having no strong positions on immigration beyond two key areas. I know, Walter. The two key areas that he did care about, he resisted anything that looked like Trump's Remain in Mexico policy. That's really too bad because that policy works so well. And he did not want to send children back across the border. So what's amazing about that is if he had just revoked remain in Mexico and then tried to stop sending children back home to Mexico, it would have been bad, but it wouldn't have been as bad. So who was responsible for revoking every Trump executive order, for the slew of executive orders that Joe Biden signed when he got into office? Day one, opening up the border for 4 years of his presidency, only until June of 2024. Only until then did he start to reverse some of the stuff because the election was coming up.
First of all, this is all baloney. This is an attempt to make it sound like there were Biden advisors who were pressing hard for common sense and just didn't get their way. And why are they still remaining anonymous? If they were such an honorable group of people fighting for the right and for common sense, and if only their policies had been adopted, things would be okay, then why are they still remaining anonymous? What? Aren't they the heroes? Aren't they the people who should be raising their hand and saying, if it had been done my way, everything would be okay? No, because this is a psyop that's meant to make you think that there was debate about this and that the general Democratic advisor is sane on this issue. It just happened that, Joe Biden, who some of his advisors described as what? They should have described him as being asleep with a piece of a cookie in the corner of his mouth. That he's the perfect foil to make America believe that there was such a thing as another immigration policy that the Democrats were considering. No, this is one that they not only considered, they funded, they did everything in God's and government's power to make sure happened, to get the numbers as high as possible. They hid the transport of people by planes because people were appalled just by about the number of people who were coming on foot. And now they're going to tell us that it was some raging debate that they lost because, Joe Biden was vital and vivid enough to overrule them. Baloney.
Yeah. It was by design.
Yeah.
The whole thing was by design. Who was it? Honestly, who was it? I really do want to name. Joe Biden obviously, was out to lunch, but there was a cabal of far left wokesters around him trying to pull the strings on this and other woke policies that didn't consistently align with even Biden's own policies prior to getting to office. And that's why Trump is undoing things
right up
like
until the election. Right up until the election, they were telling us that, they were looking for a better bill and they could change this, and it was just a bit of an adjustment that was necessary and so on. They weren't telling us this. They weren't saying, wow, we really
and Walter, they addressed that. They addressed that bill in this article, the fake bill meant to really push through immigration reform once and for all. And you remember, audience, that Trump, then candidate Trump, was like, don't sign that piece of shit. He was like, that gives the Democrats some false win with some prophylactic measures that aren't really going to get it done. And will actually make things worse and not better. And the Times treats that as a serious attempt by Team Biden to govern and recover from this issue. But those terrible Republicans stopped it, because Trump wanted the electoral win. They actually treat that like it's a serious piece of legislation that came from genuinely caring Dems who wanted to address this unfortunate thing that just happened down at the southern border.
They're creating an alternative history, and now they're telling us the story of how that alternative history came to be. But it has nothing to do with anything that we saw, nothing that happened. It turns out that the answer to immigration policy was lock the door. Okay. And it stops it. They want that left out of the entire debate. They want this to make it seem like it's a very complex issue when, in fact, Trump revealed it to be probably the least complex problem of all we face. I mean, I'm shocked.
It's so true. You're right. Lock the door. Works so well. Works with intruders,
right,
psychos, and illegals. In the piece, amazingly, they use the photo, the very controversial photo of Border Patrol agents that they once, I'm showing it to the listening audience, where you see two migrants kind of down nearby a horse with a Border Patrol agent on top of it.
Right.
That was misrepresented by the Times and other outlets at the time it hit in September 2021 as Border Patrol agents. At the time they said, quote, on horseback chasing and in some cases using the reins of their horses to strike at running migrants. Others said outright that they were whipping migrants. Now they use, that was all wrong. The photographer from Reuters who took the shot said nothing of the sort ever happened. That's a lie. And they still went with it. The White House came out and said that's what had happened. And now the New York Times chooses that image of all images that could represent our border problems. They choose that one. And here, clean up the description somewhat to images of Border Patrol agents on horseback waving their reins while pushing migrants back. We know very well what you're doing, New York Times. You're once again trying to smear the agents you defamed with this image that you already programmed your leftist, misinformed viewers to think is an example of abuse.
But you're absolutely right. Programming is the word. They've got to get that, on a 6-month cycle, they've got to get that picture into the American mind. On a 10-month cycle, they have to remind you of something called comprehensive immigration reform. On a 18-month cycle, they have to remind you that there were Biden advisors who had other ideas. None of this is real. It's just making it an alternate encyclopedia that will help explain maybe 2 years from now why everything's completely fallen apart, but not because we did it. We were trying the whole time, didn't you see?
We reported on it. We reported on. We covered that.
Right.
That I can hear them saying, like, we covered that. Sure. Literally a year plus after the election, you utter cowards. And here's the other thing, Walter. So at the same time, they're trying to create their plausible deniability on why they didn't report on the immigration crisis, honestly. They're doing reports like these. Okay, we just pulled a few of their more recent headlines on the ICE raids. What made those necessary? Oh, wait, see Chapter 1. Okay, inside a courthouse, chaos and tears as Trump accelerates deportations. Here's another. Should ICE agents be allowed to wear masks? It depends whom you ask. ICE agents are wearing masks. Is that un-American? What if ICE agents show up? Schools prepare teachers and parents. And then a new fear in schools. Will ICE agents come? They're doing it all again.
Well, see,
trying to prime the public to hate this thing that has been made necessary by Joe Biden.
But this is the other thing that has replaced, what we formerly called journalism. You call it priming, others call it programming. They're basically deciding what the agenda for the discussion should be going forward. It shouldn't be, is your job being replaced? It shouldn't be, are housing prices too high because illegals have programs where they're buying the houses that your kids want to start life in. No, it's going to be some pseudo controversy over masks. Are they scary? Are they American? We will not be allowed to discuss this next phase of the immigration problem, which is going to involve, the complex of deportations and other legal maneuvers, scandals like we're seeing develop in Minnesota over the Somalis in Minnesota. See, that's the one they really hate. They want to get it back to masks. Are they mean? Because we just found out that an entire state of America, where I grew up, has been used basically as a hose port. They attached a hose to Minnesota. And then they took all the tax money that they used for every single social program they could think of, from autism to, food insecurity, and shoved the wealth of all those fucking farmers and all the people who work all day long in that state right through a tube that goes across the Atlantic. And now that caught people's imagination. And it's still catching their imagination. And the Times did not break that story either. County Highway Magazine.
City Journal did.
No, I broke it. Sorry. And
County Highway?
Wall Street Journal, well, you go back and read their editorial. It was County Highway. 1 week before Rufo, we wrote, because we're a paywalled, exclusive platform that doesn't, put our stuff onto the net. It was out there a week before. A guy named Armin Rosen. It covered the entire waterfront on that fraud story. And that's a story that locally has been known for years. We really, and everybody else just finally listened to the local reporters. That's what happened.
Wow.
And that
you got to give us a heads up when you got a big scoop like that. We got to make sure it gets on
well,
the MK show.
but the main
because that's been a game changer. I mean, now you've
it
got
has been a game
Dr.
changer.
Oz and CMS saying we're doing our own investigation. We're not trusting Jacob Frey or anybody else sitting in Minneapolis to tell us what's real about the extent of this fraud. We're taking this bull by the horns and figuring it out ourselves. And we're just going to shut shit down. Like, if you think you're going to just take advantage of Medicare and Medicaid and we're just going to let you do it, think again.
And the New York Times, which then did a Somali story, a Minnesota fraud story, but of course they forgot to tell us that they were actually pushing the governor of that state for vice president of the freaking United States a year ago.
Yes.
Please.
Why? You tell me how it is that none of that was vetted, right? Like, they are taking deep dives into J.D. Vance's background, making up lies about him when he was Trump's running mate. But we didn't know that Tim Walz, Kamala Harris's running mate, had maybe $8 billion worth of fraud. And by the way, there were criminal prosecutions going on. So it's not like it was that hard for them to figure out. They didn't want to do it because it would hurt him and because they can't talk about crime committed by Somalis.
Listen, all aspiring investigative journalists in America who, can get a car and have low needs and can live on a little bit of money, get in that car and go to Minnesota right now and live there for 2 years. I'm not kidding. You are going to find a bottomless, connected tunnel system to the rest of American political chicanery, fraud, and corruption. It starts there. Or at least it surfaces there. And from their portal, you can get to all the other ones. Keith Ellison, Tim Walz, Ilhan Omar, the entire top line of that Minnesota Democratic Party, which they call the DFL there. This is a state where just a few months ago, a man in a rubber mask assassinated the former House Majority Leader at her home. This is a bad place.
Yep.
And this was the state where our future Democratic national leadership was going to come from, in the form of Tim Walz, in the form of Keith Ellison, who's got national party ambitions and so on. You can't get.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Now he's on tape with some of these Somalis talking about the whole Minnesota game, and seems to be very willing to run cover for them. He denies he knew that it was fraudulent, but seems to be very interested in how he can get heat off of them, not whether this is a legitimate group doing legitimate things with the Medicare and other public services funds.
Let me tell your audience as a fact, Minnesota as it exists now politically, in terms of the people and celebrities and celebrity Congress people and so on that are on our TV all the time, is about to face a meteor that's going to destroy it all. Those people are not going to be, some of them won't want to even be in America in a year or two. Really, I promise you. It's so bad.
Why? What do you mean?
Well, the corruption is so bad. The levels of financial malfeasance are so high. Not only was there not vetting, but there was opposite vetting. I'm not letting you into this government before you prove you're more corrupt than me. You have to be at least as corrupt as me if you want to be part of this thing, okay?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll sell each other out.
Sounds democratic.
The damn thing is a criminal gang, which is just the right size. It's big enough to get people's attention, but it's small enough for people to still see it in a snow globe, how it really works. See, Washington's too freaking big a corrupt enterprise for us to even see one tiny part of it, But this Minnesota thing will allow us to sort of watch in almost a stadium version how our politics works and how our people lie and how the money gets sucked up and how it gets redistributed. And it's not going to stop.
Let me just give some numbers to what you're saying, because they back you up totally. The housing program in Minnesota was supposed to cost $2.6 million annually.
To do what?
Last year, instead, to do what? Who knows? It paid out over $100 million. So they said this is going to be a $2.6 million outlay by government to help Somalis, I guess, get housing. Instead, it was 100 million. The autism program was supposed to be 3 million. It was around 3 million in 2018. It ballooned to nearly 400 million by 2023. 400, which is why you have state lawmakers now in Minnesota going on YouTube saying the Democrats knew. We have been jumping up and down about this as Republicans for years, saying this is fraud. We knew they knew. He said at a minimum they looked the other way, but it was such huge numbers. It was clear to us it was active fraud with which they were willingly participating. Nothing else would explain their unwillingness to crack down on a system that was supposed to cost $2.5 million and cost 100, or supposed to cost around 3 million to help kids with autism, but suddenly was 400 million.
And that's just a couple of programs. This isn't fraud. Listen, fraud is when you steal like a tenth of what there is and secretly embezzle it and use it for something else. Fraud isn't when the thing grows by a multiple of 400 and every bit of it is corrupt. That's industry. That's a form of industry. And this is their industry. They don't make computer chips. They don't make car stereos. They don't make, wonderful, wholesome cheeses fresh from the farm. They make giant checks out of nothing that they distribute to people for hundreds of millions, for billions of dollars, so much so that there's extra to go abroad. This is their product. It's their main product. Fraud is their main product. And it's not fraud because everybody knows what it is, right? Who are they fooling? Wait, you really thought that autism was getting cured in Minnesota? They fooled you? No. Nobody who ever saw that program went anything but, oh no, I hope they don't take too much. I mean, I hope maybe one kid accidentally gets help sometime in the next century, but I doubt it.
Right. Exactly. Accidentally. By the way, Rich McHugh, who works for News Nation, a great reporter. I used to work with him at NBC. He's a great producer who quit NBC in disgust over their cover-up of the Harvey Weinstein serial rapes. Good man. He has 5 daughters. He walked out saying, F you. You had the story. You killed it. You know why. I'm out of here. Good man. Works for News Nation now. He just dropped a report on how a similar problem is happening in Maine. The headline of his piece that just hit today is Maine whistleblower alleges Minnesota-like fraud in the state Medicaid program. I'm going to bring you some highlights of this in just a bit, but I want to stay on Minnesota for now. If this thing leads to a cascading revelations, Walter, and it's going to be blue state after blue state. And by the way, the next target needs to be the bullshit disability claims that people file, which sometimes are legit and oftentimes are totally fucking made up, where they get a huge portion of their salary forever on the taxpayer dime because they find some doctor to say they're permanently disabled. Okay, but if that leads to a cascading reveal in state after state, it's going to be blue states in particular, then great, so much the better. Think of all the money we're going to save.
Well, will we, is the question. I mean, let's hope we save it. Let's hope places like Minnesota even have, when you've got a completely corrupt political system, and I don't like to use the word corrupt anymore because that suggests that it was healthy at one point and then got unhealthy. No, this system does exactly what it's meant to do. It extracts wealth from working people, from, real efforts and enterprises. It takes it, it repackages it using various, laudable goals. Autism, they might have a list. Can this one be on autism, disability, whatever? We need, a label. So whatever they put on it that, tugs heartstrings, then they come up with a product, which is autism centers, or, I don't know, a center you can call, or a board, or whatever. All the money gets
housing.
All the money
gets
gets
pushed
Somalis through the system. It all ends up back in either the accounts of the politicians themselves, their families, all the fake companies they set up to support their campaigns, all the fake NGOs they set up to support their issues, or it just goes right out the door on planes in the packages of 1 million sealed, bills, shrink wrapped to the airport in Somalia where they unload it, and bring it over and buy tanks at the docks from Russia or whatever. Once that has all happened, do they have a instrument for getting it back? Do they have a way to go find all that money? Maybe the government does. Shit, it's got enough problems getting rid of the people who shouldn't be here. Now it's going to have to search for all the money in Minnesota in half the bank accounts of the political parties of Minnesota. This could take a long time.
Well, here's the thing. Maybe we'll get lucky enough that the next big fraud will be unearthed in a city that's recently changed out its far left mayor to somebody more reasonable. Because part of the problem in Minneapolis is Jacob Frey, who is a crazy, insane, woke progressive who was too chicken shit of the Somali community to actually do anything about this problem. I mean, the New York Times, that's not Megyn Kelly. The New York Times is reporting that the Democratic officials in Minnesota and Minneapolis were too afraid of cracking down on Somalis and looking like racists because you're not allowed to say black people can ever do anything bad to do anything about it. They'd rather see the population get fleeced, black, white, and otherwise. So here's Jacob Frey, an example of it. Just watch this. He's trying to make the point that his city police in Minneapolis are not going to cooperate with ICE. What a shock. But check out when he starts speaking at the end in Somalian, which is their main language in Somalia. Arabic is second. Take a listen to this guy.
I want our police officers keeping people safe. I want our police officers responding to violent crime. I want our police officers preventing homicides and carjackings and shootings from occurring in the first place. You know what I don't want them doing? I don't want our police officers spending a single second hunting the father down that just dropped his kids off at daycare, who's about to go and work a 12-hour shift, who happens to be from Mogadishu or who happens to be from Ecuador. That man makes our city a better place. And so to our Somali community, Daman Shabka, Somaliyed Kunul, Minnesota, Garahan, Minneapolis, Waan, Kuji Janilahai, Waan, Ku Gereb Taganahan.
You are fucking in America. Speak English. And if your Somali constituents cannot understand English, you and they are hashtag part of the problem. The absurd pandering going on here, Walter, is literally at the very heart of this problem.
Well, so he's an actor. He's, like Justin Trudeau or one of these people with a lot of hair products who I call them the Mickey Klaus Club, the WEF approved young leaders who have to put their hair a certain way and, speak in foreign languages and stand up to ICE and do all of these other things. First of all, his police force doesn't stop crime. His police force is bleeding, is dying. It is desperately trying to get new recruits and can't get them, is hundreds down. So your police force, ICE doesn't care about it because nobody cares about it. No shoplifters don't care about it. Nobody does. It's a non-entity. Number two, the idea that you are going to stand up for a group of people who right now should be in the dock, okay, at their worst hour. And I don't blame the Somalis all that much. See, Somalis didn't come to America by themselves. They were brought here from a long way away, very expensively by social services like Lutheran Social Services, which I happen to know is in Minnesota, runs that kind of operation there. And then they were put into districts which made safe seats for certain candidates. And they were plugged into the Democratic Farmer Labor Party in Minnesota, the Democratic Party nationally. Not that they are innocent victims, but somebody knew the usefulness of these people in order to get this whole show on the road. They didn't start it. They aren't geniuses who somehow smuggled themselves into America and came up with this whole scheme. And they're patsies willing patsies who've made a lot of money off it, and now want respect, like all gangs of crooks. Once you've got your headquarters and your fancy cars and you're eating at the nice places, then you want respect. You want the politicians to come to you. And that's what we've created here. And they have every right to act like a gang because they were made into one by their patrons. Yeah. And he should be afraid of them.
Exactly right.
He should be afraid of them. Maybe that guy who was standing behind him, sort of like tracking his pronunciation of Somali to see how good it was, had a gun under his coat. Jacob, you're going to have to talk more Somali. You're going to have to rehearse better, or else we're not going to need you around here anymore.
Walter, did you see the video of Jacob Frey eating Somali food? He honestly, it looks like he just swallowed a plate full of vomit. Look, he doesn't want to like swallow it. It's in his mouth. Oh, he's giving you the okay symbol. But there he goes, chewing and chewing and chewing. I mean, generally when you eat, you actually swallow. He's just moving the spoon around. Yeah, no additional food is actually brought to his lips.
That's how I eat salads. I move all the parts of the salad around, and then I put my fork down.
Right.
Also,
pander is complete.
He looks like he's eating an anthill. What's that giant pile of things that are in front of him? Is he supposed to work his way through that? Is this just a tasting? But again, he doesn't look like
he's so willing to self-flagellate, right? Like he'll put himself through that,
right.
But he won't put himself through accusations of racism, baseless though they'd be, for cracking down on fraudsters who happen to be Somali.
You know what happens when you enter criminal enterprise? You become the hostage of the worst people in it. You might have been Jacob Frey, good boy, leftist college kid who just wanted to make the world a little more just. But once you dance with the people you've danced with, Jacob, for the money you have, you live in a state where people in rubber masks come and kill politicians in the middle of the night. I'm sure that's not lost on you. Minnesota, like I say, we need to focus on it relentlessly because it's got an example of everything we need to know, and it's got tunnels that lead to every place we need to get. And it's got associations with every crook and gangster who's on the national scene. They just tried to slip this baby past us. Like I say, Tim Walz could be president right now, easily. We could have had, they got elected. Kamala decided it was time to finally go to rehab. And, the Constitution kicked in and Tim Walz is freaking president.
Yeah. Allegedly, reportedly. Actually, no, it's not even being reported. It's just a joke. I wanted to show this. So there's Jacob Frey eating his Somali food. Here's just a taste of how woke this guy is. This is back in June of 2020, immediately past George Floyd, when protests were everywhere, including in Minneapolis. And here's what happened. Watch this. He wouldn't commit to abolishing the police. Right after George Floyd, when we needed them the most, he wouldn't commit to abolishing them. And that's what his community did to him. So he learned real good, and he is living the lessons.
More theater. He knew he wasn't going to be attacked in that. That was a walk of shame. That was a ritual. That was to make him seem it's like the Times is doing right now. Suddenly, the Times is repositioning themselves as maybe having been reasonable on immigration. That was Jacob Frey making himself look reasonable, but under fire just for still having a police force.
He hates the cops.
Right.
You're totally right. This guy there's no distance between him and those protesters on the cops.
Yeah.
Here, meantime, is a Vietnamese man who is also from the Minneapolis area, who posted this online over the weekend. The whole thing is well worth your time, but we cut about a minute from it. Listen to this guy, SOT 4.
Look, I'm Asian. I'm Vietnamese, okay? When we have our own communities, too, and our communities thriving. We have businesses. We've been here only, less than 50 years after the 1975. Our communities are thriving throughout the United States. If you look at our numbers, there's only about 2 million of us here in the United States. And out of that 2 million people that we have, majority of us have businesses, scientists, engineers, doctors, bright mind people. that given back to this country more than we taken. And we have never asked anybody to bow down or speak our language. Okay? Since when the fuck this stupid ass mayor of the little pirate motherfucking land pirate Somalian in Minnesota have to speak their language and apologizing for those motherfucking crook ass pirates? Since when we have to do that? This is just a fucking crook, and he's a Jewish dude. What a shame, you know? What a shame. What the fuck's wrong with him?
I mean, it's pretty frank talk, but how is he wrong? Like, the pandering is beyond.
Well, he's not wrong. He knows he's right because he comes from a country and a civilization and culture that still has common sense. Like a lot of people who immigrate to America, they come from places that are actually a little saner than America. And he understood that when you come to a new place, you work hard, you start businesses, you group together with your other immigrants to form things like mutual aid societies and banks, and loan each other money. And over the decades, you educate your children, and they move up in society, and together you create something that is a great story that only American can make possible. He's looking at the new way. And I can tell you, as a Minnesotan, we had a huge wave of immigration of very hard to absorb immigrants. Hmong, Hmong. They came in huge numbers to St. Paul after the Vietnam War. And you never hear a darn thing about it. Why? They don't necessarily fit in. They preserve a lot of their traditional ways. They have some very different religious beliefs and so on, but they worked hard. Everybody loves them. And so there was a precursor to this Somalian thing. But what they weren't given was a slice of the biggest fucking carnival that you're ever going to get politically. We're going to make you rich. You're going to make us rich. We're going to gain control of billions and billions of dollars. They didn't take that deal. Maybe they knew not to bring it to them, but somehow they knew these Somali leaders would take this deal. And that means that whoever is the leadership of the Somali group really needs to be looked at carefully, because I happen to know that a lot of Somalis in Minnesota are pissed. They're going, hey, wait, we thought we were going to America, and we found out that our kids aren't learning to read in school. We're going nowhere as a group. Oh, great. Now we're hated too. Our kids are
Thanks to your fellow Somalis.
Educated. We don't have jobs. We've learned all the ways to work the system. And, the other thing about people who you give stuff to, what do they do in the end? Hate you for it. They always, because it wasn't enough. You didn't give it to them at the right time. You gave it to them for the wrong reason. Yeah. So the Somalis are not going to be satisfied. I'd be afraid of them too if I was Frey. They're like those relatives who those poor relatives who, when you win the lottery, you give all the money. Well, they're there for your house later and saying you don't deserve to live here.
Yep. Here's just some highlights of what's happening in Maine per Rich McHugh of News Nation. Taxpayers in Maine have been bilked out of millions of dollars from the state's Medicaid program, according to a whistleblower he interviewed. That whistleblower, Christopher Bernardini, describes himself as a former billing guru of a company called Gateway Community Services, which is a health services contractor that he says defrauded Maine's Medicaid program. He worked for them from May 2018 through April 2025. Bernardini alleges that Gateway oversaw a system in which false records were filed about client visits. He alleges an electronic monitoring system designed to track movements was manipulated to make it seem like field staff were visiting low-income and disabled clients, when in reality, they did not come within miles of the clients' homes. Then they charged taxpayers for providing services like the monitoring that were never performed, he says. Right. Gateway worked with the state's Medicaid program known as MaineCare. Another former Gateway employee who asked to remain anonymous said that they saw records being manipulated, time cards being manipulated to show services being provided that were not, and also times being manipulated. Well, let's check in on that company's founder to see what he has to say. His name, he's CEO as well, is Abdullahi Ali, a Somali American who, while at the time he was serving as executive director for this company that was allegedly falsifying time cards and field visits and getting reimbursed for it all,
Right.
was last year running for president of Jubaland, a state in Somalia's south that borders Kenya. When reached by News Nation, he said, "I make no apologies for building a successful business in Maine, working hard to earn a living, earning my PhD, and you cannot change facts," he says, by fabricating false stories. "I am a proud Somali American. I'll bet you are. Enjoy Jubaland. And good luck to Minnesota or to Maine and the federal government in trying to get their money back from this dude who appears to be hanging out near Kenya."
He considers the enterprise that he headed a business. But from your short description of what it does is it fills out paperwork that says you've been to places you haven't been, talked to people you haven't talked to, provided services you haven't provided. He considers that a business. Well, maybe, but if that's the business that America is going to be in and that future immigrants are going to look to open, we've got a dark, dark chapter ahead of us, because none of that helps anybody. What you're really talking about was a money skimming operation and a no-show job corporation. And that guy could be proud of anything about his life suggests he's an unrepentant, pathological criminal.
Also, pick a lane. Do you want to be a Maine American, or do you want to be in Jubaland as their effectively governor? I want to show you one thing. It's related. Maybe you saw the story of this Ed Bombas, an 88-year-old man who lost his retirement after his company that he worked his whole life at went bankrupt. Then his wife died about 7 or 8 years ago of cancer, and he lost what remaining funds he had.
Right.
And at 88 years old, he decided he needed to go get a job and was working at the grocery store until an Australian influencer went through, met him, heard the story, and opened up a GoFundMe for this dear man named Ed Bombas. Here is the video of the Australian influencer presenting Ed Bombas, whose story went everywhere, with the check that the influencer managed to raise through GoFundMe. Watch.
This may be overwhelming, but we...
I am to all the people. Reportedly one of the largest individual fundraisers in GoFundMe history. Walter, this is how we used to take care of people. We used to do it with charitable donations when someone fell on hard times, when they had a medical issue, when something like what happened to Ed happened, we would do it. But what happens now is the government's taxed everyone through the eyeballs. They're not feeling as generous. Joe Biden's inflation has run everybody to within pennies of their next paycheck. And on top of that, especially in these blue-run cities, there is a natural default to the government must and will fix it.
Except they don't fix it. They steal it. They make this problem worse so that they can have a bigger budget next year, so they can go like that autistic programming from $3 million budget in 1 year to 8 years later, $400 million budget. That's not, you see, places that fix problems go to a zero budget when they fix the problem, and then they go do something else. It's not just that we used to do it the way we saw there. It's that we don't do it at all anymore. We do the opposite now. And the fact is, every grocery store of America is full of guys like that and women like that who are just honorably getting through their lives and have faced reversals and so on. And one of the reasons we don't help each other, we don't know each other well enough. We depend on a GoFundMe, sadly, to find out about the plight of our own grocery checker. Get to know your neighbors. Get to know your world. Don't let these Sharpies tell you they're going to make everything better. They never do. It's going to be the $5 out of your pocket that makes somebody's day better today.
Amen. And good for this Australian influencer, Sam Wiedenhofer, who saw someone suffering and did something about it. More with Walter right after this. First, a break. Let's talk about Real Health Armor, especially if you're done with the dye-filled, toxin-heavy stuff lining store shelves. Beekeeper's Naturals can be your clean, no-compromise line of defense. Start your day with their Propolis Throat Spray, a concentrated hit of antioxidants that keeps your immune system fortified. They say 1 spritz and you're protected. No synthetic fog, just pure bee-powdered protection. Are you experiencing a scratchy throat from winter air or crowded planes? Grab the Propolis Throat Soother. Pair it with their Propolis nasal spray to rinse, hydrate, and eliminate germs on contact. Today, Beekeepers Naturals is giving you an exclusive offer. Go to beekeepersnaturals.com/Megyn or enter the code Megyn to get 20% off your order. That's beekeepersnaturals.com/Megyn or just enter the code Megyn. beekeepersnaturals.com/Megyn or enter the code Megyn when you check out. Beekeepers Naturals products are also available at Target, Whole Foods, Walmart, Amazon, CVS, and Walgreens. Before we leave the subject of Minnesota and the fraud there, Ilhan Omar, I mentioned it when we opened the show, is out there not apologizing for what happened in her community that she represents, that bilked all of us out of billions of dollars, but instead talking about how Stephen Miller is a Nazi. Here she is in SOT 3.
I want to ask you about something else that the architect of the president's immigration policy, Stephen Miller, said.
On CBS.
On Thanksgiving Day, he posted, "No magic transformation occurs when failed states cross borders. At scale, migrants and their descendants recreate the conditions and terrors of their broken homelands." What do you make of this argument of failure to assimilate and sort of ruining America? How do you understand this?
I mean, when I think about Stephen Miller and his white supremacist rhetoric, it reminds me of the way the Nazis described Jewish people in Germany.
Margaret Brennan
reminds me of the way that you describe
No.
Jewish people. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
Listen,
she's like, okay.
she's full. She's as full of ethnic hatred. She's as full of group hatred as anyone I've ever seen. I guess she would know it in others, or maybe she's projecting. What these people want us to believe about our leadership is very simple: that they are motivated by deep, visceral, mythological hatred rather than very obvious human motives, like "give me back my stuff," or "don't ruin my neighborhood," or "don't burn down my city."
Don't steal from me.
Right. You don't have in science, you don't have to look for the cause that's so remote it's out among the stars. You can look at the thing that's in front of you, which is a city full of crime, full of crime that didn't used to exist, full of neighborhoods that still haven't been rebuilt after the George Floyd riots, a city where people are afraid to go downtown to the giant corporate ballparks that they had to pay for partly with their tax money, but are now too unsafe to visit. Racism, Nazism, you're going to end up giving those things a good name, because if young people think that not wanting to be hurt, not wanting to be robbed, not wanting to have all your money taken, not wanting this kind of social disorder is Nazism, then they'll end up embracing it, frankly. The problem here is that name calling as a response to massive destruction in the tens of billions of dollars and in crime statistics and everything, why are we still allowing it? Why are we stealing?
Right.
Why is a network person still allowing the conversation to be about that?
That's right, Margaret. Margaret Brennan sat there and let her smear Stephen Miller as a white supremacist.
She set her up for
as though it were a fact, because clearly she agrees.
Yeah.
I don't really give a shit whether Margaret Brennan agrees or not. Her job when he is not there is to push back on that kind of rhetoric, or you get sued. At a bare minimum, it is unfair and unethical to allow. But she did it because I guarantee you she agrees with it. This is why we played this soundbite at the time. So Stephen Miller's wife is named Katie Miller, and she's a podcaster, and she was on Doge, and she has been making the rounds recently on CNN and other platforms, trying out some punditry spots. And sometimes it devolves into arguments about her husband. And that happened when she went on CNN's Abby Phillips show, because Abby Phillip she both hosts this hateful woman named Jennifer Welsh, and she went on Jennifer Welsh's hateful leftist podcast, and had absolutely no problem sitting across from Jennifer Welsh and listening to her say the same things about Stephen Miller. She didn't flutter an eyelash. Abby Phillip wasn't moved by it. I guarantee you she agreed with it. And then she tried to talk to Katie Miller and others on her panel about language and what's proper language. And Katie Miller was not going to stand for that, having been the one who lives with Stephen Miller and has to literally deal with the fallout from this kind of rhetoric about him being used everywhere on leftist TV. Here's the following exchange.
Wait, you have Jennifer Welch on your show very often, and you've never pushed back as she has called my husband a white nationalist.
Hold on.
That is no
Katie.
different than Nick Fuentes going on Tucker Carlson's show. It's not, and you should admit it.
Well, hold on. Wait, hold on. How is it anything similar? It's not remotely similar at all. Nick Fuentes sits around and says that he likes Hitler. How is that similar?
What does Katie have to do with it? What does she have to do with it?
Hold on.
She has nothing to do with it. Literally nothing.
Scott, Katie is the person who just said to me that it is comparable to say that Nick Fuentes, who is literally a neo-Nazi, is the same as somebody, a liberal, who has an opinion who is not a neo-Nazi. They are not
a hateful opinion.
The same.
How do you want? Excuse me. Let's go back to this point one more time.
But
Nick
Katie,
Fuentes can espouse an opinion on Tucker Carlson's show.
It is not
and
the same
he didn't push
thing.
back the same way you didn't
Katie,
push back when someone called someone in my family a Nazi.
Hold on a second.
It's not different.
Hold on a second.
It's not.
If someone comes on this show and says, I love Hitler and I admire what he did, they would never, first of all, I would never invite them on the show and they would never be invited back. So those two things are not the same thing.
But yet you've gone on Jennifer Welch's podcast. It's the same thing.
Here's what's amazing. So Abby Phillip doesn't understand. She's upset. She doesn't like the anti-Semitic views of Nick Fuentes finding any sort of airtime.
Right.
But it's fine for her to platform and promote by going on the show of a woman who's spewing anti-Semitic rhetoric about an American Jew, calling him a Nazi and a white supremacist. Hello, his people were the ones killed by the Nazis merely because he's enforcing the border, because he's the architect of Trump's border enforcement programs, which now even the New York Times has to admit were necessary thanks to Joe Biden. That's because Abby Phillip and Margaret Brennan, both of them, Walter, both of them agree about Stephen Miller, and they want those things said.
Of course they do, which makes them Hitler. In fact, my whole life, 63 years old, I have studied World War II. It hadn't ended that long before I was born. We still had TV shows, Hogan's Heroes and so on, when I was a kid. You know, we made models of the battleship.
Loved it.
Battleships and the airplanes. We're still talking about it. I've almost forgotten who Hitler was. I've almost forgotten what Nazi Germany was. These people arguing here, I promise you, if you ask them what the major battle of the last part of the war was that caused Hitler to lose, they have no freaking idea. This is just a language game and a show business game that's being used. And these words have lost all meaning. Nobody knows what Hitler looks like anymore. If he hadn't had a mustache, he would have disappeared completely in their minds. And the conversion of real life issues into language games and debates about hatred is the greatest trick ever to get people not look at the fact that their ship is sinking and the water is up around their neck and they're still arguing about Hitler. It's a complete device by which we no longer look at reality and we just find the like-minded people who, like you say, are going to have the right attitudes. Megyn, I don't know where they find these people. How do they all end up getting network news shows? I mean,
I know that's how. That's how.
Really?
I mean, what's amazing is Margaret Brennan could have asked Ilhan Omar that question in any one of a number of ways. She could have said, do you admit there's a problem with assimilation with many of these Somalis who come over here? And can you understand the anger that American-born natives may have to opening their doors and their communities to millions of Somalis, only to find out that the vast, vast majority of those committing the fraud are Somalis? Do you understand that?
But I'm going to
why not give her that question?
Well, she should have, obviously. But even more than that, coming from Minnesota, I can tell you assimilation isn't even the problem here. Like I say, the Hmong people have not assimilated all that well in the sense that they're not all speaking the language and out there, you know, doing all the all-American stuff. But people don't hate them because what they hate isn't people who haven't assimilated. Do that on your own schedule. We like it when you do. It's convenient. and I think it shows respect for your country. But what we really hate is when you take all our frickin' money using our heartstrings and our care about autistic children and things like that, and you turn it into giant dumpster loads of $100 bills that you take to your headquarters and distribute as baksheesh to the loyal party members and then ship abroad. We really hate being stolen.
Possibly to Al-Shabaab, a terrorist group.
Don't turn
yes,
it
we
into
hate that.
assimilation.
And we all, but the problem with most in the influx of Islamic communities is that they don't want to just do their own thing. I do have a problem with non-assimilation, but let's just say that that's what they were doing, non-assimilation. Okay, that'd be not great in my view, but nowhere near the problem that they want us to assimilate to their values. And as Trump once said, largely they come from shithole countries like Somalia, and we have zero desire to change anything about America to look more like Somalia. It's a no. We're not going to dress like the women who are part of your group. We're not going to accede to the non-separation of church and state. We're sick of the 5-time-a-day call to prayer starting at 3 a.m, where we have to listen to people shouting Allahu Akbar, because many of us associate that with the worst terrorist attack to ever happen on domestic soil, 9/11. So it's a no on us assimilating to you. Right. If you want to be surrounded by a bunch of Somalias, go home.
But, you know, Megyn, we don't care that the Amish don't assimilate, but they leave us alone. I mean,
they don't want us to trade in our Chevy Suburbans for the horse and buggy.
You know, there are a lot of groups in America that choose to live in a sort of separate way for whatever religious or cultural reasons, or they go slow with their adoption of certain American things, which they might want to be smart about. Like, I don't know that the idea when you get from another country is to go to the mall and try to become a suburbanite American. You might have a better thing going. Maybe you have something to teach us. What I want to,
I mean, let's face it. So in certain sects of Islam, if you do that, you're going to be honor killed.
Well, that
truly, like, becoming more Western has been the basis for way too many so-called honor killings by diehard Islamists who don't want their daughters, who they brought to America, to become at all Westernized.
But you see, it's not assimilation that scares me. It's conquest. It's when you try to push your damn program on me and tell me that I have to start giving up my program bit by bit, piece by piece, because yours needs more space, yours needs more money, yours needs more prestige. And in fact, I had my run because I'm part of some group that was successful 100 years ago in Europe, which they weren't. I promise her, they wouldn't have left. They were Hungarian gypsies who had horses if they were lucky and went around in covered wagons. Okay. Anyway, it's not assimilation that's my problem. My problem is aggressiveness, conquest, theft, and the attempt to basically back me down in wanting the basic things for my family and my community so that you guys can get more.
Since we are on the subject of our dishonest media, let me give you this soundbite from Stephanie Ruhle, who's an MSNBC anchor. And she appeared at the New York Times Deal Book Summit roundtable. They invited us to attend this thing. We said no. And here she is, shocked to hear that anyone thinks MSNBC has a liberal bias.
You should trust the media that earns your trust. You know what you're going to get when you tune into Fox News. You know what you're going to get when you tune into CNN. You know what you're going to get when you tune into MSNBC.
I challenge that. You don't.
Oh, that's not true. I know exactly what I'm going to get when I turn on Fox News. I know exactly what angle they're going to come with. If I turn on MSNBC, I know I'm getting a left angle. I know.
Are you shocked when you turn on MSNBC? Or are you like, oh my God, I didn't see this tape coming?
And I invite you to watch my show any night of the week.
Okay. You would be the first to do so because she literally has no avid fans whatsoever. There are no numbers following Stephanie Ruhle or anybody else at MSNBC other than the one day a week that Rachel Maddow shows up. But we dipped in so that you won't have to. Here's just a sampling of how the totally objective, who could guess where she's going to land, Stephanie Ruhle sounds on that program. Watch.
I just said I'm not going to vote for her.
Is not running for perfect. She's running against Trump. And so there are some things you might not know her answer to. And in 2024, unlike 2016 for a lot of the American people, we know exactly what Trump will do, who he is, and the kind of threat he is to democracy.
The latest attack has been that Joe Biden has politicized and weaponized the DOJ, right? That was the whole argument around Donald Trump's conviction. And this week, of course, Hunter Biden was found guilty, and Joe Biden has very clearly said he would not pardon his son. How stark is this difference? I mean, how can Republicans keep making this argument? Where's Hunter? And he's accepted his sentence. What will the future hold now that America has just decided that we're going to F around and find out?
That was the day after Trump was elected.
What a painful
Walter,
phony she is. Where did she learn that act? I love going on your show, Megyn. Somehow you didn't turn into one of those creatures. She has some kind of training in looking authoritative and getting other people to shut up. And every once in a while she uses an expression from the internet like FAFO. And basically all she does is she's like a party leader, an enforcer. People don't know what they're going to get when they tune into her show. They know exactly what they're going to get. That's why they tune into
exactly.
That's why they tune into her show.
That's right.
You're going to dismiss
That's why
everybody
those 4
else.
viewers.
You're going to act like you're smarter. You're going to not give it any substance or evidence for your arguments. You're going to continue to act as though things that giant disasters that have happened didn't happen. You know, shouldn't you be in mourning for realizing that Tim Walz almost became your party's vice president when you're seeing what happened? Shamelessness at that level is absolutely a skill. And I don't know where they learn it. And I don't know how they hang on to it and how they socialize such that they never meet real people. But I don't think they ever do. The Hunter Biden bit is amazing. Like, now how are they going to attack him? He says he's not going to pardon him. You know, he said it. Oh, okay. How'd that work out? Wrong again. Was it just because she was blinded by her totally well-placed faith in the president's word? No. The rest of us all knew it was bullshit when Biden said it. We doubted it openly on the air, and therefore we didn't look like fools when he actually did. But the truth is, 15 minutes before Trump became president, Joe Biden pardoned his entire family. Yeah. His entire family. I mean, like, and there she is just pretending like he said he's not going to. So, right, you know, right. But there's never another true. Show. That's what's real. There's never a second show where, like, excuse me, I said he wouldn't pardon Hunter Biden, but he actually did go and pardon everybody named Biden a little bit later. So I got to revise. No, she just launches assertions into the void that will never be challenged, that will all be wrong. And she knows the moment she says them that they're going to be wrong. But she's going to keep going and through sheer momentum, stay ahead of reality. But that whole model, staying ahead of reality financially, media-wise, in terms of your statements about how things work, isn't working anymore. You can't just go on sheer blarney and momentum anymore. That's my bet. If you can. Or can you? Because speaking of Rachel Maddow, there's no bigger perpetrator on TV of the fake Russiagate hoax. She's numero uno by a long distance. Totally agree. There are some like Natasha Bertrand over at CNN and others in the print media who do contributor roles. Yeah. But she's number one by a lot. And is she sorry? Has she changed her tune? Is she acknowledging that this is all a fucking pack of lies? Here she is on Colbert a week ago tomorrow. It was last Tuesday. We've been meaning to get to the soundbite. Right. Here it is today. And works for Vladimir Putin. I don't know what Putin has on him, but he works for Putin, and it's an embarrassment to this country. Well, what did Putin have on Biden when he invaded Ukraine under Biden, apparently unafraid that Biden would do anything and properly because Biden didn't? Okay. Well, Rachel, with your glasses. You've been on too long. You do a job. Your job was to sell the idea that Donald Trump was Putin's patsy. You did it in every McCarthyist way you could. I have in this sealed envelope the secret contract between Putin and Trump, and I will reveal it on a future show. She teased every damn thing from taxes to whatever. We were going to have the big reveal. It never happened. In fact, Putin got his biggest gain under Biden when he invaded Ukraine. And now that's Trump's fault too, somehow. The whole thing needs to be swept away. By the time the new year comes, Rachel, Megyn, we need there to be no more Rachels. We can remember them. We can have their, baseball card.
On the air, not in general.
but we no longer need to play with this model. They're all from another world, and we're trying to move into a reality-based world where we solve our problems, keep track of our money, get results for our political enterprises, make people tell the truth, and so on. And that whole circus that they've been running, it needs to leave town. And if it won't leave town, then we need to ignore it.
It's not. It's metastasizing. And now, not only do we have to deal with the principals who are saying this nonsense, but we have to deal with their spouses who are saying equal nonsense. And that leads me to Jimmy Kimmel's wife, whose name is Molly McNierney.
Right.
We showed the audience her sound bites when we were out on tour, where she blasted Trump, saying, this is after her husband had a 6-day suspension, saying that they had to break it to their daughter, that this all happened because of Trump. He's the reason that Jimmy's show was suspended, as opposed to Jimmy's inane comments trying to blame Charlie Kirk's assassination on MAGA. Didn't take any responsibility, blamed Trump with her child. And she also confessed that she's lost relationships with family over Trump, because voting for Trump is not voting for my husband and me and my family. And now she's out there at the Hollywood Reporter's 2025 Women in Entertainment breakfast. And take a listen to Jimmy Kimmel's wife. Now she's making herself, in her own mind, into a star. She's done nothing other than, I guess, write for Jimmy. Must have been a really tough gig to get. And now they're making a feminist icon out of her because she waxed poetic on a podcast about how Trump is to blame for everything. Now she gets, I guess, an award at the Hollywood Reporter's Women in Entertainment breakfast. And here's how she used her time. SOT 19.
I've been asked to speak about freedom of speech, and I have to be honest,
Why?
I naively assumed it was a guarantee in this country until September 16th, 2025. It's something that I took for granted. It's something I thought I'd always have, like my period. Did you guys know that those just stop? They just stop. Your period stops, you guys. It stops.
You're
and
so
it
weird.
turns out that some freedoms in this country can too. We experienced it most recently in 2022 when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. And we got another taste of it 2 months ago. I watched a show and coworkers and friends and a man I love be put on indefinite suspension after our very thin-skinned president asked for his removal
Oh my God.
and for his FCC chair to publicly threaten the company that we work for.
Yeah, he's Nelson
It is
Mandela.
a fragile time for freedom.
Wow.
Oh my God, Walter, she is straight out of Central Casting with like the uptight, tight little face and the bad haircut and her bad color choices out there trying to lecture on how Jimmy Kimmel truly is like a Nelson Mandela because he had 6 nights off, 2 were over the weekend, and he got paid millions of dollars for it and became some sort of cultural free speech icon as a result of him saying MAGA killed Charlie. False information.
Listen, there was an assassination, lady. Your husband was talking about the victim. He characterized the assassin as coming from a world that he didn't, at a time when people were mourning. Your network, the network that ABC and its affiliates comprise, has a duty to the national to the national common good. It's expressed in a contract that they make for their broadcast license. That someone spoke up and said, you know, you might be starting to tread on a violation of your agreement with the FCC. And that became the day the music died for the Kimmel family. That became the day that all of America should get down in mourning and worry about whatever didn't happen during those 6 days that would have otherwise, they didn't go to the top of the line at Disneyland and they didn't get all these other free things that weekend. No, she is a propagandist, and that she's linking it to women's issues. How weird. Free speech,
the period?
Free speech and menstruation are somehow the same thing. And
she's on a tear. She's in front of women, so we have to talk about bleeding out of our wherevers because that's what defines us. Okay, we got it. Didn't President Trump take a whole lot of shit for making that point? Only you get honored if you say it as a leftist.
Yeah.
If it's all about your period and you're on the left, it's great. You get an award at the Entertainment for Women, whatever
Megyn,
that event was.
I've
Who the hell
spent
cares?
years on
Hollywood
this free
Reporter.
speech issue with Matt Taibbi. We've had endless harassment and persecution over it, frankly. Bad things have happened. That she then took over for the Kimmel family, the issue of free speech that day was an appropriation of the work of people who really have sacrificed, who are really trying to keep free speech going, who are trying to
That's a great point.
keep us from turning into Europe or Britain or Canada, where you can go to jail for a tweet. That's what we're trying to do, the real free speech people. What you're trying to do is complain about losing some damn friends over a weekend in Hollywood. You didn't lose any friends. You gained friends, I promise you. You had a little blip in the
You're
ratings.
enjoying playing the role of victim.
Yes. And they're taking away the issue from the people who really fight for it, and they're turning the issue into something it's not.
Yes. Okay. So on that front, I've got to play the other soundbite of her at this event. It requires no introduction. Just watch this.
There are women not lucky enough to be in this room outside these walls who desperately need us to use our hard-won freedom of speech. There's a woman out there who is separated from her children by masked men right here on our streets and sent to a country she does not call home. She needs our voice. There is a woman who is not going to be able to afford her sick mother's insurance premiums. She needs our
because
voice.
of you.
There is a woman who's being denied the ability to make choices about her own body and her own life, and she needs our voice. There is a woman burying her boy, shot for being black. She needs our voice. There is a woman being called Piggy by our president. She is one of many female reporters being shouted down. It's always the women being shouted down. I know it's a lot easier to talk yourself out of it and to bury your head in TikTok. My husband and my workplace, my livelihood and my friends have been threatened multiple times by the President of the United States and the propaganda machine that feasts on deliberately misinterpreting our words and making comedy the enemy.
Oh my God. There's so much wrong with that soundbite.
Your damn show gets people.
She's crying. There's a tear coming down her. There's a tear. Why did the president attack Jimmy Kimmel? Left unsaid is the number of vicious, untrue attacks he launched on Trump. And the nerve to talk about how Trump called a woman piggy. Take one look back at your husband's disgusting, offensive history when it comes to the treatment of women, never mind blacks. Now she's super worried about black boys being killed innocent by police, which is a fucking lie. And what about your husband in his black face speaking in Ebonics, mocking Karl Malone, Oprah, and countless others? Perhaps you contributed to the environment you claim to be so upset about. Jimmy Kimmel's wife, whatever your name is, Molly.
They created it. They did skits about shunning your family during COVID. They've done skits about telling your Trump people to go to hell. You could argue that your dehumanization of the other side gets people shot in the head. You could argue it. You could argue that the Ku Klux Klan got Martin Luther King shot in the head. And you could argue that the Jimmy Kimmel show got Charlie Kirk shot in the head. I can argue it. Why shouldn't I? It, in some ways, stands to reason. The number of people that you have called Nazis, infected outsiders, below human interest, anti-vax Barbie lovers or whatever, could fill America. You have done more to make us hate each other, hate ourselves, not associate with each other, use words to dismiss each other rather than use sentences to explain ourselves to each other. You are at absolute ground zero of American hatred and division. Own it.
Yes. Okay, all my yelling made me need a cough drop, so I put one to preserve my voice, which is just coming back. But the nerve of this woman. And by the way, I forgot to mention Rachel Maddow, smugly sitting on that couch, totally fucking safe with her multi-million-dollar homes, dismissing Steve Witkoff as the doofus golf friend of President Donald Trump. That doofus golf friend just achieved peace in the Middle East. You absolute cretin. And because he hasn't managed to land the plane yet with Ukraine and Russia, he's a doofus golf friend. I mean, the smug, elitist nastiness of that woman sitting there.
Megyn, since they don't have to have any substance to their charges, since they don't have to back them up with evidence at all, and since when they're proven wrong, they don't have to apologize for them, then I just think we should accuse them right out of the gate of what they accuse other people of. I think Rachel Maddow is an agent of Putin. I think she's an agent of...
Or maybe she loves Hitler.
I think she's an agent of Russia. And I think she should prove with her taxes and other things that she isn't. Until then, I will say that the reason she always goes against Putin is to make it seem that, that we're angry at him while he gets his way with everything. She is just an absolutely McCarthyist, opposite of what they used to call the Red Scare. And it's gone way too far. There is absolutely no discipline on them except that they lose market share. And yet they still go on. I mean, why did they keep MSN Now even on the air? It shouldn't even be here anymore. They're keeping it on some life support, mini MSN Now.
But how about the nerve, Walter, of Rachel Maddow trying to play off her Russiagate hoax, months and months of completely unfactual, unserious reporting they gave me quite a hard time over that reporting. It's looking pretty good now. It's panning out.
Megyn,
this is unbelievable, the gaslighting.
But this is how we know we live in a controlled news environment, okay? It's controlled from above the level of the boardroom. I'm sorry. Because that story, on mere editorial terms, in terms of how it was working out, whether it was proving true, etc., should never have gotten as big as it was. The only people who needed that story to go forever were the Democratic Party leadership. That's the people who needed it, and they apparently control people like Rachel Maddow, and so she is, in a sense, an agent of someone, and because she's now committed to the bit, and the bit, we don't even remember the bit anymore, but she's still anti-Putin.
She's banking on it.
Yeah.
I got to take a quick break, but there is one more media story that I've got to discuss with you. It's been really bothering me. I'll explain it after this break, and then if time allows, we'll get to MTG on 60. Don't go away. We talk a lot about personal responsibility on this show. Well, here's one aspect that's really important: your health. And I'm not talking about following whatever the experts recommend. I'm talking about real data-driven decisions based on your body's actual numbers. We demand transparency in government, but most of us have no idea what's happening inside of our own bodies. Disease can develop silently for years before symptoms appear. By then, you're playing catch-up with expensive treatments instead of preventing problems when they are cheap and easy to fix. Well, I want to tell you about Jevity. They are revolutionizing preventative care with something radically different. 100-plus blood markers tested at your home. Personalized supplement packs shipped directly to you based on your deficiencies. Biannual retesting to track progress, plus ongoing virtual consultations on your schedule. This is healthcare independence, and you get 20% off at gojevity.com/Megyn. With code Megyn, don't forget to use that. That's gojevity, i.com/Megyn, because no one should control your health decisions but you. If you could make one holiday wish, would you wish to be free from your credit card and other debt? Well, here is why now is the time to make a move. This time of year, credit card and loan companies close out their books. They clean up past due accounts and they sell or write off debt. That means if you have credit card debt and unpaid bills, lenders may be more open to negotiating and settling your account before year end. You may actually have leverage. And Done With Debt knows how to use this to your advantage. They monitor lender trends and understand the year-end pressure on creditors, and they use that timing to negotiate hard on your behalf. Done With Debt goes to work for you month one with one clear goal: to reduce your total debt and leave you with more money every month. Get started now. Chat for free with the Done With Debt specialist at donewithdebt.com. That's donewithdebt.com, donewithdebt.com. Walter, this happened about a week ago, and it's really been bothering me. I never heard of this woman before, but I have a serious problem with what's been done to her by the media. Here were the headlines a few days back. Daily Mail. CNN star who was forced to resign after using the N-word dies at 62. The Mirror, U.S. CNN host Valerie Hoff DiCarlo dies at 62 after quitting industry over racial slur drama. The U.S. Sun. Ex-CNN anchor dies at 62 after vile racist slur destroyed career. Daily Star. Ex-CNN news anchor who resigned after making sick racial slur dies age 62. Okay, sounds bad. I'm like, what the hell did she do? Did she say the N-word on the air? What happened with this woman? You're not going to believe this story. Okay, she had a long career. From 1999 to 2017, she worked at 11 Alive, which is a local news organization. Prior to that, for a few years, she worked at CNN Headline News back in the early to mid 1990s. Here's a quick clip of her. Again, her name is Valerie. Just want to make sure. Sorry, Valerie Hoff DiCarlo. Watch.
A Parisian cultural treasure is in trouble, and a modern era cowboy who's drawing praise for his literary aim. Those stories and more with Bob Lozier after a short break. I'm Valerie Hoff. A whole day's news every half hour. This is Headline News.
She was based in Atlanta, where CNN was based, and then went on to, again, local news there in Atlanta, 11 Alive. And she died. She died last week of lung cancer at the age of 62. And that was the headline that virtually everyone went with to memorialize this poor woman. This woman who'd been a news anchor for over 20 years, serving her local community, reporting, as her LinkedIn said, on things like, she said, anchoring live coverage on CNN during the Gulf War, reporting from New York City during the September 11th attack on the World Trade Center, consumer investigation stories that have revealed, she wrote, expired groceries in local supermarkets and jewelry billed as all natural that was actually synthetic and worth a fraction of the selling price. Those are the kinds of stories that she reported on for her audience over the many years.
Yep.
So what was this moment that led to her termination from 11 Alive and led to the headlines being all about this one thing? What was this cardinal sin? Well, I went back and looked it up. By the way, she was an Emmy Award-winning reporter and anchor. It was April of 2017. She was with 11 Alive News. There was a story in the news about a man. A man had posted a video capturing police brutality in Gwinnett County, Georgia. It involved a police officer, I believe, and punching a black motorist. So he posted the video of it, and she, along with many other news reporters, were trying to get permission to use it. To the contrary of ignoring cop on black violence, she wanted to put it on the air and report on it, but she needed permission to use the video. So the guy who captured the moment is named Curtis Rivers, and he is a black man. He posted the video showing the violence, and after the clip went viral, many news reporters reached out to him to try to get the rights to use the video. He later wrote on X, I guess annoyed at all the attention, quote, "I just posted a video to get some justice. Now I got news N-words, ending in AS, all up my DMs telling me to call them." So he's annoyed. So he's calling the news people who are contacting him news N-words.
Right.
After that tweet, Hoff DeCarlo privately messaged him seeking permission to use the video. She wrote, "Please call this news N blank, blank, blank A. LOL, I'm with 11 alive." That's it. That's what she did. She wasn't using that term. She was repeating his use of that term to describe news people like her in an annoying way. She was being self-deprecating, saying, yeah, sorry, I'm one of these annoying people who's been bothering you, trying to like chum it up with him.
He's trying to get on his
like
wavelength.
being self-deprecating. Yes, exactly. And he initially had a nice exchange with her where he responded saying, and I have the tweet exchange in front of me, LMFAO. And then he says, I got it from a group chat. I don't know where or who filmed it. And then he says, I just looked through your photos on Twitter and realized you aren't black, but called me an N-word. Because her tweet reads, please call this news N-word. LOL, I'm with 11 alive. Where did you get the video?
Right.
That's what she, and so if you look at that, it could be, please call this news, like common, comma, and then the N-word. It's obviously not that because he had used that term himself. In any event,
she's saying, call me.
She responds, that's right. And she responds saying, no. I called myself one. I'm a news lady at 11 Alive. I thought you were referring to all of us. So sorry if you didn't understand. I called myself one, she's saying. And she says, this man deserves justice. And she says, again, I'm very sorry I offended you. I was not offended by what you called the media, but I should not have used it back, even in a direct message. And then she says, by the way, the second officer just got fired. And he says, how would I be able to contact your manager or lawyer? And he took the story public, which is how she was publicly disgraced.
Right.
She got fired. They fired her for this. They offered her the chance to either resign or be fired. She said it was not voluntary. And they wouldn't even allow her back into the building to pick up her belongings. They suspended her email, so she couldn't retrieve contacts of anybody. She couldn't get a resume taped together. She told the Journal-Constitution at the time, I was quoting something the gentleman said in a public tweet back to him in a private message.
Yep.
But that doesn't make it any less offensive. It was incredibly stupid and reckless. I was in the middle of a pressure-filled day trying to chase down the video of a man being beaten and kicked by two Gwinnett police officers, which this particular gentleman had posted on Twitter. I repeatedly apologized and continue to do so. The man who, kind of caused the trouble by bringing the tweet public wound up saying, just stop. I don't want her fired. Like, all's forgiven. Like, I didn't want it to be blown up into this big a deal. And that was 2017, all right, almost 9 years ago. Now this poor woman dies at age 62, very young by anybody's modern standard. And instead of the news media that might have a thought for their fellow journalists on like understanding what we do to one another in this business, how vicious we are, that you might not want to make one incident the sum total of this woman's life and her reporting career.
Wow.
Dances on her grave and uses that one innocent moment, not smart, but innocent moment to define this entire woman, wanting people to remember her as a racist who got fired for using the N-word. It's disgusting, and she deserved better.
So the story's untrue. She's not a racist. She should never have apologized and said she was having a hard day. I'm sorry. I feel bad that she's passed. I don't want to deprecate her further. But sadly, her mistake was acting like these people weren't just out to lunch and they got everything wrong. Instead, she got pulled into some human resources struggle session culture where she had to pretend to be tired and so on and not just say, like the guy called me that word, okay, as a group.
Yeah.
And then now we have this new phenomena where every single one of the obituaries has the same incident in it. Who made that decision? How does that decision get made the same way in every single newsroom, at every single editorial meeting? What? No one went back and looked? Apparently not. If anybody,
I know.
Why do we live in this world? It's almost like we are sitting still for something that we should have gotten up from the table and left a long time ago. If you're going to put that somebody's a racist in their obituary, then you need to explain very well why that's the most important thing about their life and why it has anything to do with their death. Frankly, the only reason they gave that woman an obituary was so that they could have that headline. A lot of people who once anchored at CNN's headline news don't get obituaries. This was an attempt to, as you say, prime and keep it going, keep the racism thing going by any hook or by crook. Use obituaries, use whatever you have to do. And we can't allow ourselves to be bathed in this toxin and have it be called our culture. And the people who do it need to be looked at as almost like burglars or criminals from out of town. Like, get out of our town. We're not racist. We're not going to be constantly called things that we aren't. And worse, we're not going to have our standard of living in our entire culture sink below the waves while we have arguments about who said what.
She dies of lung cancer at 62. And even that brings out nothing from them. Nothing.
She was trying to be nice
for her
when
husband.
she was called a racist.
Yeah. Honestly, it's obviously what she was trying to do. She's using his term. It's not like she pulled it out of the ether. He had said it publicly in a tweet. She's trying to bond with him like, I know I'm one of those annoying people you just referenced with this exact term. And then he threw a fit because he realized she wasn't black and she used his term. It's just so crazy. And I don't know, Walter. Like, I remember Roger Ailes used to say, like, I'm going to be savaged in my obituary no matter what happens with me. And you know, my relationship with Roger has been very well documented in many forms, but we had our ups and downs, to say the least. But I cared about Roger. I still care about him. And I never wanted his obit to be defined by his Me Too situation. He was so much more than that. And some got it right, and some chose not to. Many on the left, frankly, were more obsessed with his contributions to right-wing media as his biggest sin. Like, they couldn't get past that. But you would just think, when writing on somebody in the business, maybe there'd just be like something in the back of your brain that says, like, would I want this done to me? And the truth is, as we've learned so many times, and as every media segment we did today proves, we just have to forge on without them. They're dishonest. They cannot be counted on to do the right thing. They do not follow the same ethical compass we do.
It's one thing, though, to go after somebody like Roger Ailes, who was a political media figure, and you know, maybe taint his headline with your views. This thing that happened with this woman was a text message. It was a little tiny moment in her business day. It had nothing to do with her life. We haven't learned a damn thing about her life, in fact. All we've learned that was one day a text message misinterpretation led to the biggest disaster of all time, for which she's remembered after she dies. What kind of society is that? That's an insane society that's using language as a weapon in war. And the war can't go on any longer. And we've got to put down the weapons. And if they're used against us, we have to laugh. We just have to start laughing at them. The people who are using them they're worse than the people that they're accusing. Way worse.
Yeah. They're immoral. Yeah. This is so wrong. Our condolences to her husband,
and
Derek DiCarlo,
and her family,
on the loss
because
of his
she
wife.
sounded like a good journalist.
And her family. Valerie Hoff DiCarlo, gone too soon at age 62. Walter, thank you. As always, great to see you.
Yeah, thank you.
We're back tomorrow with Stu Burgier and Zachary Levi.